What's up, everybody? Monster Master Godzilla here, and I'm here to continue my reviews of the Spider-Man movies. We're now up to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Alright, now here we go. This one is my favorite of the Spider-Man movies. I mean, it was a good... what can I say about this one? Where do I begin with this one? It began when and they showed more flashbacks with the comic book lore, with Peter's parents, Richard and Mary Parker. The prologue depicts Richard and Mary Parker going on a plane, and they got attacked by a random assassin, which would later reveal to be a brother of Gustav Fiers, aka the Gentleman, which we will talk about later. And so because in the comic book, there's Albert Malik, aka the Third Red Skull, is the one responsible for killing Peter Parker's parents. But because Spider-Man's under Sony, is under the Sony banner, they changed it to Albert Malik to another criminal. But oh well, it's in the Spider-Verse, and the multiverse can change many things. And so, the sequel, Amazing Spider-Man 2, is also titled Rise of Electro, which Electro is played by Jamie Foxx, and he plays a villain in this one. Now, here I go. Peter is continuing his life as Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's given a different look as a costume, and it looks like this. Yeah, it looks almost similar to the Raimi suit, but a few differences, like the lenses are different, and the spider emblem's different. And Peter, people who were fans of were not fans of the Spider-Man. Yeah, the people were not fans of the Amazing Spider-Man suit from the first film. But so they went with the traditional classic look, comic accurate look. And so Peter and Gwen ends up graduating high school. He ended up graduating high school in this film. And they had some funny moments where Peter ends up wearing his Spider-Man suit with different attire, regardless of which crime they were in. Spider-Man ends up wearing a fire department helmet, and when Peter was in a convenience store trying to get medicine, he puts on his Spider-Man mask and gloves to foil a crime, and he still pays for the medicine. Which, those are funny. And there was a moment where Peter ends up being all looking rough, and he ends up hiding his whole body in the Spider-Man suit. And he says, "I'm extremely naked, Aunt May," which they kind of took it from an episode of the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series, where Peter pretends to be naked in bed. He says, "Aunt May, I'm indecent." And so then they introduce Max Dillon, aka Electro, played by Jamie Foxx. Yes, that's right, Jamie Foxx. For this version of Electro, he does a good job in this film, but they kind of messed him up. It's not because of the casting choice. Nothing wrong with him. They're just poorly made and executed. And they made him blue. They try to make it based off of the Ultimate. They try to base him off of Ultimate Electro in full power form, but it didn't work. It didn't work out. And the origin is that Electro fell into a pool of electric eels, which mutated his body and turned him electric, having electric powers. And this time they introduced Harry Osborn, a different Harry Osborn, this time Dane DeHaan. And Norman Osborn appears in this film. This time he was sick and dying, and he had a disease that was hereditary, which is a hereditary condition, and which also causes which causes Harry to have the disease too, and he was on the verge of death. Sort of like Alzheimer's disease, where it's hereditary. And so Peter ends up, and also there was a thug which appears and got arrested, played by Paul Giamatti, which you don't really see much of him in this film. And he got arrested in the beginning, of course. And there's also a moment where Harry ends up asking Peter, that knowing that he's friends with Spider-Man, that to talk about donating blood, to save him. But Peter realized that what if his blood is not compatible with Harry? So he went as Spider-Man. So he attended Harry's place as Spider-Man, and Spider-Man tries to tell Harry that can't give him his blood, because what if their blood is not compatible? So after that, Harry ends up being pissed off in disappointment after Spider-Man left, accusing Spider-Man of being selfish, thinking Spider-Man is being selfish and not unhelpful. So Peter ends up going after. So Spider-Man ends up leaving the place after, and Electro has been arrested, of course, and he was taken in. And he was taken into this asylum, which feels like that could have been Ravencroft first, which is like Arkham Asylum but for Spider-Man villains. And so Harry Osborn ends up figuring out a way to free. Harry ends up freeing Electro from his prison, and Electro's costume in the end could have been a little different, but it looked very generic, which looks like a whole bodysuit with a lightning bolt on, which is very generic, which they should have kept him looking like this throughout the entire movie with a hood. And so Electro ends up battling Spider-Man, and when they had a power surge a little bit, and Gwen had a moment where she tries yelling for Spider-Man's name, and he yelled, "Peter!" And she'd do this. Because how would she know that someone would hear her? Because, come on, they're in New York City. In reality, New York City is full of similar people with similar faces and voices. So Spider-Man's pretty elusive with his mask on. I mean, New York has too many people to even notice that. So what I say about this one is, when Spider-Man ends up taking on Electro, and Electro had this battery on his head, which what happens when it overcharges? When he overuses his powers, he exploded and dies, and that's the end of Electro. And then, out of nowhere, the Green Goblin ends up coming in, and this is what he looks like here. And my God, that was the worst representation of the Green Goblin, which just doesn't feel right. The looks of the Green Goblin in that movie just did not feel right. And so, at the final battle, the Green Goblin found out who Spider-Man really is, realizing that Harry, as the Green Goblin, found out who Spider-Man really is, and he ends up battling Spider-Man, causing Peter and Harry Osborn to become friends turned enemies, just like in Spider-Man 3, but only this time is more like the comic book, which they tried and failed miserably. And then after Peter, then they tried making it more like the comic book, where this time, after Peter defeated the Green Goblin, Spider-Man tried saving Gwen Stacy from her falling to her death. He shot the web, caught her in the web, but only to have her fall and have her neck snapped. And then Gwen died, which is very much like the comic book. And my God, it caused a big outrage riot of between the fans, because they don't realize that's actually in the comic book. And it was like and then Spider-Man ends up, and Peter ends up having a fit of rage over that he failed miserably. And so they, and so at the end, the Green Goblin is pretty much shoehorned into the story, and later after the Green Goblin's been defeated, and so at the end, Harry was sent to the asylum. He ends up meeting this mysterious man, in which you never see his face and you never know who he is because of a lot of reasons. So when it was revealed to be Gustav Fiers, and he has his brother responsible for killing Richard and Mary Parker. Supposedly there was a deleted scene where at the cemetery when Peter was visiting Gwen, he ends up meeting his father Richard Parker, which was cut from the final film. Supposedly in the film they were supposed to have Mary Jane in this one, but all the scenes with Mary Jane in that movie were deleted from the final film. And they didn't even show deleted scenes with her in the DVD release, which it was really cut from the film. And it would have been played by Shailene Woodley, which you've known her from the Divergent series. So after Gustav Fiers has been introduced as a shadowy man, there are a few Easter eggs that would have led up to Sinister Six, like Doc Ock's tentacles was seen, the Vulture's set of wings, and a black goo which would have indicated Venom. And then they released a criminal from there, and ended up introducing the Rhino, which is this guy right here, which they really wasted the character, and he wasn't really in it. I don't know why the Rhino was on the cover of a DVD when he's not really in it, not even in the movie, not in it for the majority of the film. And also there was a woman at Oscorp named Felicity, which that's a Easter egg to not Felicity. There was a woman named Felicia, which it was an Easter egg indicating that's Felicia Hardy, also known as the Black Cat. So yes, Sony, they really messed this whole movie up. They had crammed way too much into one movie, and they had the worst script ever. So that's why the Spider-Man movies went downhill with this one. So what I can gather is that they had really crammed too much in one movie, and I knew that if they kept making Spider-Man movies, I knew, growing up with the Sam Raimi movies, I knew that if they kept making Spider-Man movies, they're going to have to get somebody different than Tobey Maguire eventually. But couldn't they at least get the script and the stories right? They just really crammed too much in one movie for this one, that's why I had a bad script. And the way they ended it where Peter ends up trying to continue being Spider-Man after Gwen Stacy died. So he ends up taking on the Rhino. And that ended on a cliffhanger. And it was setting up for a sequel it was setting up for Amazing Spider-Man 3. That never happened. Which, it was all thrown away. Which, bottom line, this is not my favorite of the Spider-Man movies. I have this for the collection. I enjoy it still. It's just not one of the strong movies. This is the weakest of the Spider-Man movies. This one is so weak it made Spider-Man 3 look like an Academy Award winner. So, would I truly recommend this one? I don't know. Maybe yes and no. For a casual moviegoer, maybe not. But for a hardcore Spider-Man fan, yeah, you can go for this one. But I will say this one is like for hardcore Spider-Man fans only, but even they can be disappointed. Bottom line, there will be a better movie with Andrew Garfield in it soon. in the very future. So, without, like, in a very distant future, I meant, like, there'll be more after, for Andrew Garfield in this marathon after a long while. So, so I would, so I would probably, so I would, so comparing the first, this one to the first, sadly, Amazing Spider-Man 1 had a better storyline than this one. So, I don't truly recommend it, but, I mean, it's just not the best of the Spider-Man movies, nor the worst. But I've seen better movies than this, and movies that are way worse than this one. So, I mean, if you're looking for great Spider-Man stuff, you can skip this one, because this might leave a bad taste in your mouth. You either love it or you hate it. Although it did not have great reception in the box office, but it had made a profit. So, this is not one of the strong movies. I mean, it's entertaining, just not my favorite. But there are a lot of better Spider-Man movies to watch, which next will be a better movie. I promise you that. And as always, stay awesome, my Monster Masters, and stay amazing, Spider-Man fans. And that's all I have to say, folks. And as always, stay awesome. Goodbye.